Commodore emulation has always been a true pain, especially on the Commodore Amiga. A turnkey solution with easy point-and-click emulation? Am I telling the truth, or am I a filthy, dirty liar? Let's find out together, coming up next. Hi, Shane R. Monroe here, and today we're going to look at the Cloanto Forever packages. That's Amiga Forever and C64 Forever. These are turnkey legal emulation packages packed with content already that you can buy for fairly cheap that will get you into the complicated world of Commodore emulation. The Amiga was a very complicated machine, and as such, it is very difficult to emulate and to emulate properly. With Commodore 64 showing up on both sides of the pond, both overseas and here in the United States, we have things like PAL timing and all sorts of other crazy things that make emulation a bit more challenging than your standard Atari 2600 emulator or NES emulator or N64 emulator. So let's not get too deep into the background of these products. I'm dying to show them to you. So let's take a look first of all at the Amiga itself, right? The Amiga line is many and varied. They range all the way from the original Amiga 1000 all the way up to sort of hybrid new hardware, new Amigas that are still coming out today through fan and community projects. The Commodore 64 and the original Commodore PET line range way back. As you can see here, we have very old Commodore PET computers going way back to the 70s, as well as some newer models. One of the last models that sort of came out was the SX64. I could do a whole series on Commodore computers. Suffice to say, there are many Commodore computers, many Amigas, many Commodore 64s, and one of the best things about this package is that it allows you to sample a lot of the machines that maybe you never got to see, and they're in a fully working, ready-to-go state, which can be very difficult if you've ever played with Commodore emulation before. So there are two different packages. The Amiga Forever is one package, which of course deals with the Amiga line of computers, and C64 Forever, which deals with the 8-bit lines, such as the C64, the VIC-20, and the PET computers. So we're going to just go ahead and open both of these, and you can see that they share a very similar interface. In fact, it might be better if they just both used the same interface, and that is an option, and we'll get back to it. So upon first run of these guys, well, this isn't first run for me, obviously, but upon running, you'll get some very helpful tips to help you along the way. We're just going to go ahead and close those off. So let's take a look at the interface real fast, just to sort of get you acclimatized. And then what we're going to do is merge these two interfaces so that we're only using one interface to access all the systems. So we'll start over here with the Commodore 64 Forever Edition. Again, the UI elements are about the same for each one. So essentially what we have here are a handful of folders: systems, games, demos, gallery, and video. Most of the video stuff are going to be on the DVD editions, which you probably did not fork out for. You would probably buy the cheaper digital editions, which do not have, well, in this case, any videos. On the Amiga side, they also have videos. Many of them are the same, as you can see, and they're shared, but you can also see that they're on DVD and not available as part of this download package. So we're not going to focus on there. But on the gallery side of things, you have things like patents, confidential documents that were running around at the time, some of the first demos that came out to show you what it was capable of. In fact, I interviewed the creator of this package, Mr. Batilana from Cloanto, and our interview is available right here, which is kind of cool. I contributed to the whole package, which makes it kind of neat. So what we have here, of course, are some media surrounding it. You could probably go to YouTube and get a lot of this stuff. But let's be honest, it's nice that they thought to put it together. The demo scene was alive on these machines. These are developers that are usually hackers or sometimes even cracking groups that decide to see just how far they could push the machine. And they came in the form of what they called Megademos. And the Commodore 64 and the Amiga both have a very rich history, and we're going to talk about some of these coming up. Of course, games. These machines were gaming machines. Commodore didn't want you to think of the Amiga as some sort of a gaming console, but in the end, the Amiga's power and prowess really shined as a game machine. As you can see, some of these ports are absolutely crazy, like Arkanoid. It's dead on to the arcade game. Deluxe Galaga is still one of my absolute favorite shooters. There's a multitude of product available, and this all comes as part of the package. I didn't add any of these. What you're seeing here is what comes out of the box, and that's the difference when you're dealing with a legal emulation package where they have the rights and they've taken the time to do all of this correctly. Now, I know there are Pi images out there. I've even covered some of them, but I assure you that Pi images focus on classic consoles. They don't spend a lot of time on computers, especially not Commodore 64 or Commodore Amiga. Every time I've tried to set up a Pi image with Amiga or Commodore 64, I am drastically disappointed because people just aren't putting the time into it. Cloanto is putting the time into it, and we reap the benefits of that. And then finally, we have systems. And so obviously the Amiga had a variety of systems, including two CD-based systems, the CD-TV and the Amiga CD32, which many people probably have never seen, and you've heard about it. You'd like to take it for a spin, but you can't because they're extraordinarily expensive to get your hands on an Amiga CD32 these days. And of course, you need the media for it. It's rough. Emulation is really the best way to experience some of these things, only because, not because it's better, but because it's just easier and cheaper to get into. On the Commodore side, of course, we have the old PET computers. We have the VIC-20, which is nicely thrown in here as well, along with some other stuff, such as oddball Commodore machines like the Commodore 16, the Plus 4. Oddly enough, GEOS is included here, and GEOS has its own rich history, and maybe we'll take a look at that later. One thing I did notice is not here is the Commodore SX64, or the Executive Luggable Portable Commodore 64, which I thought was sort of an interesting thing to be missing in this huge collection of like every Commodore machine known to man. All right, so I did tell you we were going to combine these interfaces, and that's how we're going to start. If you go to the little gear up here, which opens up your options, the very option at the very top is merge platforms. So go ahead and do that in both packages, and changes will come into effect next time we open. I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to close them. Now all I have to do is open one of the packages, and I get both. And I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Of course, no video of mine would be complete without a barking dog, and I'm so sorry for that. Hopefully it won't get bad. We'll clip it. So now if you look at the interface, we have a shared interface, because it all does the same thing, along with two sets of folders. So it essentially just combined them all into one simple interface, which is the way we're going to work it from now on. All right, so I know you're dying to get into the nitty-gritties, but I want to show you around a little bit. If you're in a hurry, as always, I have chapter jumps in the description that will help you get to the section that you really, really want to see. In the meantime, I'd like to go over some of the utility pieces of this package before we start jumping into the games and start talking about how that works. All right, so we're just going to take a little quick tour around. There's edit, play, standard sort of stuff. So let's look at the games. I mean, that's what we're actually here for, right? Let's be honest. I mean, it'd be great to run GEOS on the Commodore 64, but in reality, what we're really looking to do is run some Amiga games, right? So let's start over here. Looking at this part of the interface, you'll see that the game is listed along with the publisher and the year it came out. It'll also tell you if it's ready to go or if it needs to be downloaded. I'm not sure there's anything that's not ready to go in the package, but it is possible to do a smaller install, which means you have to install these files separately later on. But I'm doing a standard install. Everything is right out of the box. I've added no games to this collection. This is what you get when you make the purchase. Nothing crazy, no images to go hunt down. This is it. Along with that, you get this almost looks like a rating, but it's not. It tells you how many disk images are required for that particular game. In this case, it's 3 floppy disks, 1 floppy disk, this is 2 hard drive images. What's that all about? We'll talk about that in a minute. 1 floppy, 2 floppies, etc. And you can see, I won't go through the whole list. You guys can pause this video at your leisure. I'll scroll kind of slow just to show you what's available in here. And there's some, I mean, listen, it's a pain to go back and license a bunch of these titles. So to get this many games is simply great to be included with the package. There's all sorts of good stuff in here, though. Plenty of things to keep you busy. Yes, of course, you can add your own stuff, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on the Commodore 64 side when we get there. Deluxe Galaga being one of my absolute favorite games, and you can see it's a hard disk image version, which is exactly what we want, because the floppy drive versions all are a little bit gimped in terms of you don't get the speech, you don't get AGA, you don't get advanced type settings. So lots of good stuff here. And the same with the demo scene, right? So how many discs is it? 9 fingers, one of my absolute favorite demos. You saw it at the intro of this video. 2 floppy disks are required for that. Here's 2 different hard drive images required for these items, and it goes on and on. Demos are a little bit easier to secure than games. Even though they don't have as many of them, they have a lot of the ones that you probably remember if you were an Amiga head growing up. Again, some of my favorite ones include Desert Dream, 9 Fingers, and again, we're going to look at some of these. And of course, State of the Art always holds this crazy place in my heart, and it's also a good test of emulation prowess, as if you've watched some of my Amiga Pi or my Raspberry Pi Amiga videos, you'll know that Amiga emulation is a real pain to get right. So, did these guys do it right? We'll find out together. We talked a little bit about the gallery and the videos, so we're not going to really go into that. Instead, let's dig into what each one of these things look like. So I'm going to go back to games, and I'm going to go into this Deluxe Galaga because it is a hard drive image. I'm going to right-click on it, and you have a handful of features. Here you can play with different versions of UAE or WinFellow if possible. So these are the top 2 Amiga emulators. Obviously, WinUAE is the ipso de facto standard, and you can play it with one or the other version if you would so desire. You can create a copy. Why would you want to do that? We'll talk about that in a minute. You can also move them between folders, add it to an auto start. We'll talk about that later. You can open the folder where the file is. What's this RP9 thing? We're going to talk about that in a minute too. Delete it or set a rating. So let's go in and edit this, because these are the sorts of things that the diehard, you're probably saying to yourself, I need to add, I don't see the game I wanted here, I need to add it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that is used by this platform. They use something called RP9, which is a retro platform, and I'm assuming it's version 9. So essentially an RP9, let's go ahead and do this real quick. Let me open the folder where the file is. And you can see these are all RP9 files. All of these Amiga games are all RP9 files. What is that? Well, you might just say, well, they're probably zip files, and you'd be right. Let me go ahead and make a copy of this Deluxe Galaga, and then I'm going to rename this as zip. Now let's take a look inside. Yep, exactly what we thought. It's a zip file that's got stuff in it. So inside the stuff is a preview image, which we see on the screen. There's an XML document that presumably has details about how to run the program, a help document, and then HDF, which is a hard drive file or hard drive disk image. As you can see here, it's even identified because I allowed Cloanto to take over those file associations when I installed the app. Right, so yeah, that's exactly what we kind of figured would be in there. So if we were to do an edit, now maybe this makes a little more sense what we're actually editing. So we have some entity entries like who the publisher was, we have a title, we have a year, we have, oh, it looks like we can set a quality rating here, a default quality. Oh, and it's stored inside the package, so I guess that wasn't set out to be on the internet after all. So there's all sorts of other little goodies in here. I just want to jump around a little bit to show you. I don't want to spend all my time setting up a file here for you, but the type is a game, the genre, whether it's a compilation, a cover disc, an add-on, it's got trainers, what the home page is for it. So content ratings, right? All sorts of crazy stuff. If we look under extras, we see some items here, some help documents that are included, along with the preview image. Now the meat of the matter. Those of you who are chomping at the bit to say, hey, where do I change the settings? Here's where you change the settings. What model of Amiga, what version, what Kickstart ROM are you using? Type of compatibility modes. And all of this has hover over help to give you an idea. What CPU do you want to use? So right now we know by looking at this configuration of Deluxe Galaga, it's going to be an AGA or a next generation Amiga game. It's going to be running as an A1200 emulator. And we see that it's using 1 megabyte of fast, 2 megs of chip memory. These mean something to you if you're an Amiga aficionado. If you're not, this is like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Display, all sorts of things. You can even handle cropping. It's nutty how rich and detailed this retro platform is. And now we look at the media. How many floppy drives are we using? We're not. We're using a disk drive. And this is the hard disk that's being mounted. That file name should look familiar to you. Is it bootable? Is it read-writable? All that good stuff. And there's some automation. And then you can set up your joystick. How many players? All sorts of stuff. Port 1 is going to use a mouse. Port 2 is going to be a joystick. And you can make edits to that. Swap the joystick ports. Blah, blah, blah. These are all things that you're going to want to do if you're going to make your own RP9 file or add software to this emulator package. No, it's not as easy as dropping an ADF file into a folder somewhere. But on the other hand, it's also much more powerful than doing it that way. All right, so let's go ahead and run it and let's see what this looks like. So it goes ahead and spawns the emulator window. And again, this is nice and turnkey, right? There's no weird hidden menus. Everything is right up front where you would want it to be. And here is the mighty Deluxe Galaga. I've clicked inside the window, so it's going to capture my mouse, and it tells me I can release the mouse holding escape. And let's see, do I have, if my controller is actually plugged in? Oh, good, it is. So now I didn't have to configure anything. I'm using an Xbox Elite controller, and literally I turned it on, and it was registered, and it works. If you've ever tried to assign joysticks or controllers to, let me go ahead and pause this. So I'm going to hold escape, and I can hit pause. So if you've ever tried to actually hook up controllers properly to an Amiga emulator, you've probably found some challenge to that. This is all out of the box. I mean, it just doesn't get any easier than this. All right, so now that we're paused, let's look around. Obviously, there's the ability to pause, right? So we figured that one out, Sherlock, right? So let's look around the interface a little bit. One of the things you may notice right away is the ability to zoom the screen. And since we're in a paused mode, let's just go ahead and put that back on. We'll let make sure the audio's down so it doesn't blast over me. So you can flip between sizes and, of course, go full screen, which we'll do. And hold escape to get out. And that did not work as I'd hoped because it put it on my other screen. Well, that sucks. Well then. Sorry about that. That was one of those things that I probably should have tested ahead of time before I made the video. Suffice to say, it did go full screen, but it went on my other monitor. There's also a couple of other goodies you can do here, of course, which you can capture a screenshot to the clipboard, capture a screenshot, or open where the screenshots are. So we can capture a quick screenshot and then open the screenshots folder, and you can see that the picture is right there for us. Very turnkey, very easy. Now, what's missing from here? Where's the video record button? There isn't one. If I had to take away any points for this, would be the lack of the ability of doing a quick video recording of it. So now you're going to set up OBS, you're going to set up something and capture and do the whole bit. I would have loved to have had video output capture built right into this thing. That would have been great. You can also share. So you can share to Facebook or Twitter. I'm not going to share to either one of those. So I don't know exactly what that does. If it does a screenshot, not sure. You can also save a snapshot. I know you looked at the record button, you said, Shane, it's right there. That's the video record button. Man, it's not, unfortunately. It is a snapshot. So just like many other popular emulation packages, you have the ability to take a snapshot of the game so you can continue later, or perhaps take on a boss again, that sort of thing. So we'll click on that, and it takes a screenshot, it pauses the game, and we can put in a description for that snapshot. And then we can go back and launch that snapshot. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Shane Test, unique name. All right, so now we've got the snapshot, and we can continue. So how do we get to said snapshot? We'll go back and look at that in a minute. Of course, you can turn off the emulator, pause it. You can hide the main interface window, right? If I were to click this, this window in the background would go away. Let's focus on the bottom. On the bottom, we have all sorts of good stuff here. If we hover over this power light indicator, it will show us the model that we're currently using. You have awesome keyboard emulation options. For example, let's say that you're in a position where you can't get to a keyboard, but you have to use a keyboard to advance a trainer, hit yes, hit no. You can always use a virtual keyboard. and snap it even to the bottom of the image, and now you can use the keyboard to enter your name. Hey, look at that, perfect timing. I didn't even plan that. How about that? All right, so there you go. So now we can use the virtual keyboard, and I'm going to turn it off because it's bothering me. And you can, of course, do a couple of different special keys that are maybe a little harder to get to. You have mouse emulation, right? So you can emulate it in port 1 as a mouse. You can easily switch this over to joystick for a 2-player game, for example. In this case, this game plays awesome cooperatively. So it'd be easy to flip over to another joystick. And you can even choose what device you're using, right? So if I were to go in here and I'm emulating a joystick, you can actually emulate a quick keyboard set. You don't have a second controller, but you want your friend to jump in and play Deluxe Galaga with you. Or you can simply assign it to one of the controllers that the application understood when you ran the emulator. And of course, you can insert disks, move disks around. Of course, we are using a hard disk image in this case. So you can flip it to read only just in case you're worried that something you're doing on the image might write to it and you don't want that. So that covers the interface. Let's go back here. Now, when I exit out, it does give me the opportunity to make a snapshot on the way out and quick close. So basically, you can say, don't show me this dialog box. If I want a snapshot, I'll let you know. Otherwise, stop nagging me about it. All right. So now when we run this, the next time, oh, hey, look, there's Shane's test snapshot. And we can pop ourselves right back in and pick up where we left off. I mean, again, nothing special. Most emulators do this now, but understand, one, that this has been doing it a long, long time, and two, it's very, very simple. There's not a lot of nonsense going on with this. It's easy to use, and that's what we're looking for when it comes to Commodore emulation. Okay, so we've ran a game, we've looked at snapshots, we've looked at the ability to edit. We will build our own, because one of the things oddly missing, you probably, if you're on Twitter, you follow classic gaming type feeds or anything like that, you probably noticed that at Christmas time, Commodore 64 people talk endlessly about something called the Christmas demo. And this Christmas demo was released by Commodore. It was in stores. If you went to Sears in 1983 and you walked by the Commodore display, it was probably playing the Commodore Christmas demo. And that particular demo holds a lot of nostalgia for me and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of Commodore people all around the world. So you would think that they would have that inside of this package. But if you look under the C's, there's no Christmas stuff in here. If you look under X for Xmas, because that's a lot of the ways that it was spelled when it was being passed around, you don't see it here either. So the Christmas demo is definitely something that me, as a huge Commodore enthusiast, I would want to add to this. So we're going to do that together here in just a minute. Before we're done with the interface, I want to show you a couple of other things that may or may not be immediately apparent. There's a search box down here. And I could have typed in Christmas. It's very tiny lettering on my big screen here. So nothing in Christmas, but if I type in Galaga, oh, I'm in C64 stuff, huh? If I type in Smash TV, right? So you can see that this works, and if for some reason it's not here, there is a search thing that will jump you out to Google or your default browser's search engine, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever actually clicked on this. But you click on that, and it does do a search for the title that you're looking for online. But again, you know, you got to use your own judgment in terms of where you get things and what you get. I mean, it's the Commodore 64. I don't think anybody's going to come after you, but just put that in there. There's no quick way to delete this. If you double click it, it doesn't highlight it, so you have to actually hit delete. I would have liked to have had an X button next to it. That would have made sense. Or if I double click in that field, it would clear the search criteria. A couple different ways they could have done it. It's a nitpick, but I have to bring it up. Okay, so we talked about that down there. Let's hop up here and look down the menus. Some of this stuff is very, very obvious. Some of it may not be so obvious. So let's look at modes. So we have 3 different display modes. I know what you might be thinking. Hey, Shane, can I put this on my TV and have a 12-foot, 10-foot joystick-driven experience where I could lay back like a Pi, right? You want it to be like a Raspberry Pi where you can sit back on the couch, use your controller, and just play Commodore 64 games. No. The answer is no. But let's take a look at why. So you can change this into columns mode, which will put you into the more traditional look with no graphics or anything, just a very simple interface. And you can go into something called arcade mode. You're going, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Now, does that work with the controller, Shane? The answer is yes, yes, it does. So you can, now demos would probably be fine this way, right? So if I wanted to do a Commodore 64 demo using this interface, you're probably okay, as long as you don't have to push any keys, right? You don't have a keyboard available if you're sitting on the couch, or maybe you do. My point is this is not the super exciting turnkey kiosk experience that you might be looking for, unfortunately. I mean, they've made an attempt, and listen, it's better than nothing, but I'm afraid that the nature of emulating classic computers that require keyboards and mice, the controller's great, but it doesn't always cut it. But you do have the option to use that. Maybe that is something that will improve over time. I, of course, like the tile views. I like this display. I've got plenty of resolution. Hey, I didn't realize Lupo Alberto was on here. I always played the Amiga version. I wonder if that's in here too. Where's Lupo? You'd think that they'd get both. Oh, they don't. That's too bad. Weird game, but fun. Basic platformer. All right, so let's see, what else do we have? So we could look at details, I guess, of one of these if you wanted to see what that looks like. This is the setting up what you want the details to look like. It's no big deal. And the next thing we really need to look at, and probably the last thing we really need to look at before we start talking about the emulation powers in themselves, is how do you add your own items? So let's do that now. So make sure you're in the right area, right? So I'm going to go to Games here. Under CBM files or Commodore files, I'm going to go ahead and use the RP9 toolbox, convert to RP9, right? So we're under CBM. If you're accidentally under Amiga, this may not work as well for you. It already knows where, I've already done this once, obviously, as a test. So it knows where I've got my files at, which is a D64 disk image and a screenshot. And where do I want it to go? Well, I'm going to put it in the parent folder of that and start. This is really as hard as it is. Okay, so we got it. It says it processed, it said converted 1 to RP9. All right, let's see how we did. So where is it? Well, let's look under my folders. Well, there's nothing in here. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you look inside the folder that you exported to, there's an applications. I should have probably chose games, right? But for the sake of argument, let's just go ahead and drag that folder in here. Woo, look at that. There's our Christmas demo. Now it says there's one disk in there, but everything else is kind of nothing. Well, we didn't set anything, right, when we built this thing. So let's right click and hit edit. And we can go ahead and let's do this. CBM Christmas demo 1983. And we could add a whole bunch of other stuff in here, but what I really want to get in is that screenshot. I want that image in here. So this is not an application, it's actually a game. We'll change that. I'm sorry, it is an application. It's more of a demo, really. And then we'll just call it, I don't know, Disc Magazine Slideshow. We'll call it miscellaneous, I suppose. And it was, I guess we'll call it freeware. And we could do all sorts of other stuff in here, but let's keep going. So we see that it says these are files that are unused. So how do I use that? So we're going to go ahead and say I'm showing you this because it doesn't make a lot of sense. I should be able to right click it and say set cover, right? But instead I'm going to go ahead and add image again. It seems kind of weird, but this is a running screen. And what file? So it's like, why am I having to go get the file? It's included in the RP9. Well, if you hit that little button, it will actually say that it's using an embedded package item, which is here. Aha, there's our preview. Bloop. Now it says that the image screen running is set to our preview. Ah, now we've got ourselves a game. But does it work? Right, let's find out. We double click it. And there are all sorts of options, disk turbo or true drive emulation, all the sorts of things you would hope to see. The Christmas demo is a good demo because of the audio of the Christmas demo. People are very particular about it. So I'm going to go ahead and let this thing run for just a minute while we talk, because the audio here is something very important to people. It needs to be right. The SID chip is a very complicated music synthesizer, and for some people, the audio needs to be dead on. Go ahead and bring you a little, right now it's just white noise stuff. You see, that should be pretty good. Again, this was a demo that was frequently seen at stores, at the mall, wherever Commodore products were sold, right? And this would run in an infinite loop. And there you go. Let me see if I can turn this up a little bit for those of you who are big audiophiles. This is how I remember it sounded. If you play this on a Pi, you may or may not get the right sound audio. All right, enough Christmas music. 'Tis not the season. So we know it works, and it loaded quickly. There were no problems. I didn't need to turn on true drive emulation. This is pretty much ready to go. And it wasn't very complicated. And I get the screenshots. You can put in audio previews, video previews. There's all sorts of things from a platform perspective that the RP9 file format allows you to embed inside with that thing. And I don't have a lot of great examples of anything that takes that to the limit, but suffice to say it is, it's a neat thing that they've done, and it's all for the community. Listen, they charge for it, of course, but it's an amazing package. All right, so let's take a look at a couple of things. So obviously the Commodore demo, the Christmas demo, in my opinion, is one of my litmus tests for Commodore 64 emulation. It sounds right, it plays right. I'm okay with Commodore 64. But if I go to the Amiga side and we go to demos, the state-of-the-art demo has a very interesting moment in time where it seems to really peg out the Amiga's capabilities. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the audio is down here. And there's a scene where the girl's dancing and she morphs into some objects. And that whole few seconds of time tend to be very, very taxing. And this is where you find out how good your emulation is. So I always use this as my litmus test. So this is state of the art. This is one of my favorite demos. We used to run this at like every Amiga users group that we would get together with, made by a group called Spaceballs. I'll turn the audio up a little bit. Not much to hear yet because it's just the intro. Yeah, this was always neat. I mean, you got to remember, you could look at this and go, what's the big deal? Well, one, it's running off of a single floppy, including all the music and everything, and it's done on this ancient-ass computer. So give them a break. It's still really damn cool, though, especially considering at the time. So here we're coming up to the part that always makes Amiga emulation not work well. Here we go. Not a single piece of slowdown, right? Those of you who know exactly what I'm talking about going, wow, that's great, it looks great. Those of you who don't, I'm sorry that was probably seemed like a waste of your time. Truth is that is a litmus test, and there are many, many litmus tests. This is just the one that I use when I look at Amiga emulation. So again, you can go through and watch all of these great demos that maybe you missed out on. Your brother had an Amiga, you never got to touch it. Your best friend had an Amiga, you were stuck with an Atari 800. Whatever. These demos are an interesting viewport into a different age where people really just couldn't add more memory or a better GPU or throw another piece of hardware inside the computer. You had to use what you had. And some of these things are absolutely incredible, especially when you look at something like State of the Art or Nine Fingers, 1993. I mean, let's do the math here. 2003, 2013, 2023. So we're closing in on 30 years. So this is a 30-year-old demo, right? And it's pretty amazing. I've always been a big fan of Nine Fingers. So between this and State of the Art, these are the ones I always load up. This will make this nice and big. There's a really interesting, so they use some interesting techniques on here, and I'm not gonna sit here and talk forever about this, but they use some interesting techniques. They didn't have motion capture suits, and you got to remember the time frame that we're talking about here. You see what I have to work with. That was for you, Chris. So the point is they managed to do motion capturing and then convert the motion into polygons. There's a whole article about this, and if you go up on YouTube and you search for Nine Fingers and Spaceballs, you'll find some of the source material that was used to capture these girls dancing around in here. And it always fascinated me. I always wondered when I watched this video, because you can tell it's polygonal, but they used motion capture in some sort of a way. and it's really neat. And you can actually find the original videos. I can't believe this is preserved, but you can go up to YouTube and find the original videos that these guys captured to make these polygonal things. It just blows me away, honestly. All right, well, enough of that. Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've been running a little bit long here. This is almost 40 minutes. I know a lot of you are like have probably already checked out and you've already used the jumps in the chapter description below. Let's talk about this. So the products are 20 bucks. It's not going to break you. It's legal. You get tons of goodies with it. You get the best emulation possible on both sides. And frankly, you can add your own stuff. There are a handful of oversights, right? And they're small. You should be able to just drop in a folder of ADF files if you were so inclined. Obviously, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work in the interface that they've got here. There are things like not being able to capture video. That's another little downside of this. You should be able to just click a button and capture the output of one of these windows without having to load up OBS or something like that. And of course, you could argue reasonably that the selection of content is limited, and that is for legal reasons, of course. This is touted as a fully legal package for emulating these computers, and that's exactly what it is. So I will leave you with the concept of, on both of these systems, if you look under systems on both of these, you'll have an opportunity to look at the original Amiga 1000. You'll be able to look at these crazy Amigas that have been decked out in 2021. These are whole new Amigas. You can look at the CD-based Amigas that you may have never had the opportunity to look at. On the Commodore 64 side, you can see where it all started. And you get a chance to look at this GEOS. Maybe we'll throw that up real quick. GEOS was a Commodore 64-based GUI, which essentially tried to make your Commodore 64 into a Mac. At the time, there was a big push for that, and I knew people that had spent thousands of dollars in software and hardware trying to get the best possible GEOS experience. And it's an interesting period of time that a lot of people never got to experience. Even if you were a Commodore aficionado at the time, very few people took the time or had the cash or the inkling to spend the amount of time that it took to put these sort of crazy operating systems together like this for you. And there you go. How great is this, right? I mean, this is a Commodore 64 essentially running as a, kind of like as a Mac, right? I mean, it looks like a Mac. It was obviously where the inspiration was taken from. There's Paint software, and there's desktop publishing, and there's word processors. Absolutely crazy stuff. So not only are you getting an emulator that you could download for free, like WinUAE, right? I go to WinUAE for free. Yeah, you can. But the amount of work that these guys have done and put together for you in this turnkey package, it's worth your 20 bucks. That's all I can say. All right, listen, I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to see more videos, I can show you more stuff about these packages. You're going to AmigaForever.com. Cloanto is the name of the company. They're separate packages for the Amiga and the Commodore 8-bit computers. Take a look. They have a variety of packages, including physical media, for those of you like me who really want to own this stuff on a disc and get all of those videos, right? Because we talked a little bit about that. There are videos available that you will not get if you do not have the DVD editions. So, and these are neat videos. I've watched a lot of these because I do have the DVD editions as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like the video, subscribe, check the bell, get notifications of future videos. I appreciate sticking with me on this one. I've been meaning to put this together for a while. I really love these packages. And for a quick game of Deluxe Galaga, for a quick jump into an Amiga computer, for a quick Commodore 64 hit, they just can't be beat. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.